let me introduce Senator Ling Ling Chang, was elected to the California State Senate in June 2018. She grew up in the district she represents and is a product of local public schools. Taiwanese-American Ling Ling Chang is currently the only Asian American female in California Legislature. Senator Chang serves on the 5 committees for 2019 and 20 legislative session, including Banking and Financial Institution, Vice Chair, Business, Profession, Economy Development Vice Chair, Education, Energy, Utilities, and Communications, and also Governmental Organization. She voted no on ACA 5, which is a proposition in Senate, and she is our hero to protect justice and Constitution. We respect her courage and welcome her present today and share her opinion about Proposition 16. So the audience, if you want to raise the questions, please type your question in the section of Q&A, and then we will give you a time to be answered by panelists. So Q&A can be voted on the questions, and also Q&A will pop up to the top. So let's welcome Ling Ling Chang.
Thank you so much for having me. And I apologize, I do have to hop off after this. It is a very crazy election time now. So we're really busy doing that. But I am very happy to be on here to talk about my opposition to Proposition 16. So I'm going to give everyone a little bit of a background on in terms of how propositions get on the ballot. So propositions get on the ballot in 2 ways, either through the legislature or through citizen-initiated signature process. Prop 16 was pushed through the legislature quietly as the state was grappling with a global pandemic. It started, it's ACA 5, so it started in the assembly, and many of us were not allowed to, I mean, we were sheltering in place and we didn't have session, so we didn't know which pieces of legislation was going to be introduced. In fact, we were asked to pare down our legislative packages to focus on COVID-related bills. And unfortunately, this one slipped through without our knowledge. I spoke out against this measure while it moved through the legislature very at length, but now we are faced with defeating it at the ballot. And I get it, you know, I have personally experienced discrimination ever since I was young until now, and we see it in the news, and many of us have experienced it in the API community during the COVID crisis. But let's be clear, the answer to racial and ethnic discrimination is not more discrimination, and it is certainly not state-sanctioned discrimination. So let me repeat what Prop 16 wants to remove from our state constitution, because I feel like this is very important. The state shall not discriminate against or grant preferential treatment to any individual or group on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in the operation of public employment, public education, or public contracting. So what is so controversial about that? And how did we get to the point where we are now advocating for discrimination in the law? And instead of lifting up women and minorities, Proposition 16 divides us. And I acknowledge the problem that the proponents are trying to solve, that we should be working to increase the representation of women and minorities in our public institutions. And I share that goal. But let's look at some of the numbers in higher education, for example. So since 1994, prior to the enactment of Proposition 209, UC freshman enrollment for Black African Americans have almost doubled. Freshman enrollment for Hispanic and Latinos increased by almost 243%. And white first-year freshman enrollment is equal to what it was in 1994. And here is a recent headline, this year from the LA Times. UC admits largest, most diverse class ever of Californian freshmen. We have some of the most diverse universities in the country, and our public universities and colleges are some of the most diverse in the state. So knowing this, why would we all of a sudden inject race into our enrollment process? And a lot of people would ask me, well, what is an alternative solution? You know, how do we grow equality? We need to improve our existing system and institutions. So let's look at our public schools. Our public schools are letting down students in some of the most vulnerable areas of the state. Too many low-income minority students are not getting the education they deserve in primary and secondary grades. So for example, 21% of African-American students who graduated in 2018 were considered prepared for college or career, compared to 52% of white students and 74% of Asian students. This is not acceptable. And we owe it to these students to push for comprehensive school reforms and funding so all students are prepared for higher education. Many of us are here today, including myself. We've fought for school reform for years, but instead of improving our schools and ensuring kids receive the best education possible, too many politicians resist change. And now is the time for this change. Just consider right now your zip code is the biggest determination of how good your education will be in school. If a mom in a low-income neighborhood wants to send her child to a school across town that provides a better program for her child, she's forbidden from allowing her child to go to that school. We have decades of laws, rigid institutions, and economic circumstances that determine where your zip code will be. But now your zip code determines what education you get. This is absolutely wrong, and we need to fix it. Every time a bill is introduced in Sacramento to provide minority and low-income students with more public school options, it's resisted by too many of those politicians, some who live in nice neighborhoods with schools that they are happy with or put their kids in charter schools. In fact, right after ACA 5, now Prop 16, was approved by the legislature, Sacramento politicians cut funding to schools who need it most. In 2020, we need to look to better solutions than legalized racial discrimination, because that's what this is. As the most diverse state in the nation, we need to come together to fight this kind of wrong-headed policy. And I'm urging voters to reject this. We need to come together as a state and country to stand against racial injustices. Proposition 16 is not the answer to that. And just wanted to let you all know that polls show that this particular initiative is struggling to gain support, and it will be incredibly important to vote on this. So please spread the word, and please email me too. If you guys have any questions, you can email me at senator.chang@senate.ca.gov, and I'd love to answer questions. Thank you so much.